Within each and every one of us, there are processes and potentials that take our perception to dimensional realities of unfathomable beauty and intensity. This is Skull Babylon, and you're about to listen to episode 58 of Paradigm Shift Radio, in which we welcome on our friend Alistar to join in on the adventure as we use our words to point towards these divine moments of truth. Alistar is the bassist and vocalist for the metal band DMT. In addition to discussing his work and the integration of consciousness expanding ideas within any art form, the talk revolved around personal accounts both myself and Alistar have had working with dimethyltryptamine, and how these experiences have affected our perception and drive within this reality. A lot of ground was covered in this episode, and we encourage you to watch the after party hangout in the YouTube link to hear more of the valuable information that was shared. Paradigm Shift Radio is online for free for your inspirational convenience, so in addition to sharing it further, we encourage you to donate to support the energy required to manifest this ongoing project. Remember, if you enjoy what the show provides, then please actually donate. Your support is important. Tune in for future episodes of PSR, keep an open mind, and be patient with the process. Enjoy the show. What if you were told that there is something more to this reality? That things weren't as cut and dry as they so commonly appear to be? Well, we're going to be talking about that tonight on Paradigm Shift Radio, and this is your co-host, Skull Babylon, aka Brendon Wolfshield Culton, aka Skull the Wolf, and guaranteed awesome show tonight. I really got a good feeling about it, and definitely did some bonus prep work to really just bring in some additional audio files, which is why we were running a little bit late on the live chat, but I think we got a decent amount of people joining us right now, 21 people in the live chat. Big shout out to you guys, and of course, please continue to boost the show before we really get going tonight. And if you guys can continue to promote the show while things are developing in it, maybe like once every 25 minutes on some of the pages that run more actively than others, that way so people can still get involved, because there's going to be sort of blocks throughout the show as to what's going to be happening. And what is going to be happening is we're going to be bringing our good friend Alistar on, and Alistar is the vocalist and bassist for the metal band DMT, facebook.com/DMT Music. So we're going to be hearing what he has to talk about in terms of the metal scene, like metal music, what he works on as being a conduit for conscious art. And conscious art is really something that I'm a big fan of. It's something that I do myself. And guys in the live chat, I was just going to say, guys and girls, obviously, please feel free to post your Facebook pages within the live chat so you can get connected with one another and just get the conversation rolling. And if I can get some confirmation from you guys in the live chat that things are sounding A-okay, and we'll need some feedback later on when we're playing some of the audio files. You'll understand what I mean. But again, just get some action rolling in the live chat, because we're going to be looking for some interaction from you guys in the audience. And you guys are definitely going to be help steering this show, because this is a community and interactive show. So facebook.com/Paradigm Shift Radio, if you haven't already checked that out yet, that is the place that you're going to want to subscribe to in terms of Facebook, so you can stay up to date with some of the archive episodes and as well as all the new episodes that we got coming. So just in terms of other community news, there's been quite a bit going on, but just in terms of like a couple things that are just on the top of my head, I can remind you guys to check out the Journey to Lucidity movie, which may be something that we'll be talking about tonight with Alistar. I know he's seen that, and probably have something to say just in terms of like what it was experience-wise for him. But facebook.com/Journey to Lucidity is the place to be able to check that out. And again, sorry guys, in the live chat, can somebody just confirm for me that things are coming through in the live chat? I just have this eerie suspicion that I don't see anybody talking, so that's unusual from my point of view. So, all right, thanks, Graham. New message from Graham. Hey, everybody, LOL. Everybody's like, yeah, I was too busy listening to you to be actually... No, that's really weird. There's just like no one in the live chat, so I'm just like, hopefully this is being broadcast out there, but we are in sync tonight. I was mentioning to Alistar just in the green room, so to speak, that I was getting busy adding all the files, looked up at the clock, and it was 9:06, and that is like my synchronistic resonating number. And tonight on the show, Divine Moments of Truth is what we are going to be talking about. So DMT is the band, the metal band that Alistar is a part of. So the conversation is going to be about divine moments of truth, one of which is the experience of the DMT interaction. And that's something that some of you may not be entirely familiar with, so we'll be going over the basis of that. But before we do that, we're going to be talking a bit about the metal band itself and just some other inspirational creativity in terms of people such as Terrence McKenna and also Alan Watts. Expect to hear a little bit from them later on in the show. So stay tuned, guys. Definitely got a good show lined up tonight, and please continue to boost it. I would love to see more people interacting in the live chat, and again, please continue to share with each other, connect with each other through Facebook, and if you have questions throughout the show, please feel free to post them in the live chat so we can respond to them. And of course, shout out to any of our new listeners who may be joining us. And one final thing before we bring Alistar on here, just there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with the website. Check that out, and that's ParadigmShiftCentral.com. And the base level of all this, for those of you who may be completely new, because it's this project that's been evolving for quite some time, like the Paradigm Shift Project, if you want to call it that, has been going on for over 5 years now. And it's basically encouraging people to connect physically within their local communities. To build the tribe is the thing that we emphasize, and that's through the creation of Paradigm Shift communities, which the updates on the ParadigmShiftCentral.com website are definitely going to be helping. Basically, the layout that I have for that is that individual community pages that are currently on Facebook will have an individual subpage within ParadigmShiftCentral.com, for example, /London, /Chicago, /Connecticut, /Texas, any of those ones, right? And then within there, each individual page would have a separate discussion board that's through Google, as well as Google Calendars and Google Maps, within an easy-to-access location for people who are visiting the website the first time. And those will definitely help with our organization, our communication, and inspiration and motivation. So those are some of the key things that we're always encouraging and working towards here on Paradigm Shift Radio. So if you haven't yet, just go to ParadigmShiftCentral.com and click where it says subscribe to the updates, and I'll be doing blog posts through there as the website gets updated. And of course, if you find the show of value, consider donating at GoFundMe.com/ParadigmShiftRadio. This is a show that we do because it's not something anyone told us to do. It is something that we do as conduits of consciousness itself. I mean, that's what this is, right? This is consciousness doing whatever it can to wake itself up, and that's definitely what we're going to be talking about and doing tonight on the show. So without further ado, I just checked the whole time on Alistar's call info, and it was 6:09. So again, like synchronistic hit, 6:09 is my resonating number, and without further ado, I'm bringing Alistar on now. So Alistar, if you're ready, we're going to bring you on to Paradigm Shift Radio. Here we go. Hey, Alistar, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. All right, awesome.
So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Like this is really exciting. I guess the genesis of this came through just Facebook and me seeing some of your awesome posts from way back in the day, and just like getting connected. Just you've been pretty active in the Facebook inspiration side of things.
Yeah, I run a couple pages. I run, besides my band page, which is DMT, I also run a page called The Archaic Revival, and then another page called Alan Watts Wisdom. And then I have a few other small ones that I'm kind of like co-partners with. So yeah, and then I think I ran across you because of the documentary that you made.
Yeah, I sent you a link for that. So on the topic of that, Journey to Lucidity, what's the quick review from your end of things?
Right. No, I really dug it. You know, I like the whole vibe of the festival, the whole Burning Man scene, that Lucidity Festival. There's other festivals out here, like on the West Coast too, and just the whole vibe of the community, kind of like this consciousness community, kind of that incorporates the whole psychedelic feeling and visual feeling and art, crafts, and so forth. I really dug it, and the way it kind of went through the whole documentary, you know, with the acorn and so forth. Yeah, it was really inspiring.
Yeah.
Seeing everybody's interpretation on it, you know, it's very inspiring.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, the pine cone, I think, and the whole dream thing, that's something we'll be talking about tonight. So, I mean, people are expecting to hear a conversation about DMT. Well, they can also expect to hear a conversation about how that relates to the whole, like, dream exploration side of things, too. So, yeah, just alluding to that, and that's obviously what that movie was about. And, again, facebook.com/DreamToLucidity. It's, like, one of the best movies you'll see all year, according to other people's reviews, not mine alone. and if you enjoy it, please donate at the GoFundMe is always there, as well as the Indiegogo campaign is always there for the time being. And again, like the support that we get from that as artists, whether it be like me or anyone else, the support that we get from that is like an energetic vote for consciousness to be able to create even more awesome stuff. Because this is, for myself and for Alistar, like we were talking about this before we got the show officially rolling. We were just chatting on Skype, and like we have to be like ambassadors for whatever it is that we carry with us, and we'll be talking about that more tonight, like ambassadors for like the other sides of reality that not everyone has in the forefront of their memory and their current experience. In terms of
right, I always like I like what Graham Hancock says about like it's a war on consciousness,
Yeah.
So we're speaking for that other spectrum, that other side of reality that it's just not really carried in the normal everyday paradigm.
Yeah, like the side of reality that we see through the DMT experience, and again, we'll get to that later in the show for sure. It's definitely a side of things that we as a society barely have any words to properly describe it with. In a lot of ways, it's like ineffable. But that is what, again, as ambassadors, that's part of what I feel we're here to do, is to get a piece of that and share it in this tangible world, whether it be through my film or your music or anything else,
right.
or poetry, anything else.
Right.
Yeah, we are...
It's really described best through art and like you said, like through poetry. Like Terrence McKenna always says, if the artist can't find the way, then the way cannot be found. Because it's like the artists are the ones in society that are kind of probing the edge of reality, versus, most people don't have that opportunity to actually do that. They have commitments and they have to deal with everyday life of, just living and raising a family and so forth. So the artists are sort of like those frontier people that, kind of go kind of where no man has gone before, literally,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, just since you're sort of saying it like in terms of going and exploring new frontiers, the term psychonaut has always been a preferred term of mine for quite some time. I just remember hearing that because we think about the astronaut, and that's the idea of literally going outwards as much as you can, which is a dimensional shift in itself in terms of perspective. But right. The psychonaut, the psyche, going into the spirit and the mind in itself, going inwards and exactly. Blasting off into other realms. Yeah. And I was going to say, like, as artists, as like poets, our job is to be that finger that's pointing to the moon, like kind of like Bruce Lee kind of says a similar thing. But yeah, that's what we can do. We can't be that moon, but we can point to it and get people to look at it.
Right. So the Buddhists kind of talk about like ferrymen, like people that take people across the shore, So it's sort of something like that.
Something like that, yeah. Cool, man. All right, well, in terms of the work that you've been doing within the metal scene, that's something that I really just gotta give you like props for doing, man, because it's a lot of people when they get really excited about this consciousness stuff. I think it's always really important to look at the whole spectrum of everything, really, including in this case like the metal genre, because a lot of people wouldn't really associate love and peace with metal music, but consciousness expanding stuff isn't always just about love and peace, or technically everything is love in a different form, but it's a potential to be able to carry messages like through the whatever medium, and I think I'm sure, just like for a guy who's been in the metal scene, like, inform us, like, what is the conscious, like, revolution like within the metal scene? At least what it's been like and what it's evolving as. Because that's something you're right in the middle of.
Right. As far as the extreme side, there is quite a few bands that are incorporating consciousness and kind of the psychedelic realm into their music. I know like Korn is about to put out an album, and it's called The Paradigm Shift. So, you know,
okay.
It's like... funny,
Maybe we'll get on the show.
Exactly. That'll be good intro music for you. And there's other bands like Born of Osiris. They use the artwork of Cameron Gray. Everybody knows Tool. They use the artwork of Alex Gray. And, you know, all these bands, they sort of incorporate their own psychonautical experience, you know, into their lyrics. And the message is pretty much the same across the board, you know, which is the same message like all the sages and mystics throughout the ages have always said, you know, as far as consciousness and understanding the self. And, you know, it's all been out there already. It's just most of us kind of like ignore it or don't know about it.
Yeah, sorry, I was just grabbing a drink of water. But definitely. I mean, I remember when I was back in the day when psychedelics was not just in terms of experiencing, but just in terms of like finding out about. But then having after had my own experience, like I understood more profoundly this idea that there are two types of people in this world, like those who have done or experienced psychedelics and those who haven't. And that's not to say like, oh, it's trying to label and separate, but what I get out of that is this idea that in the same way with a lot of things, you can't, for someone who hasn't had that experience, you can't like just give it to them. You can't explain it to them through words. Like it's something that they literally have to experience themselves. Like it's not, again, just thinking ahead to the DMT conversation that we're going to be getting into.
Exactly. So, you know, it's sort of like, you know, the whole paradigm of, you know, being a kid and you're a virgin and you don't understand the whole spectrum of the actual organ until you cross into that, you know. And it's the same thing with the psychedelic. It's so powerful that it can change who you are. It like changes you from the inside out, literally. And it's so powerful that, you know, anybody that is thinking of doing it or has to really, really look into it, you know, because it's powerful stuff. It's real, you know.
Yeah, like that's one thing, just in terms of divine moments of truth, we here at Paradigm Shift are not advocating anybody go out and do illegal substances. We are advocating the conversation about experiences that are associated with them. And more so than that, always reminding and promoting and encouraging you to do meditation, practice your meditation. If you're listening to this show, meditate. We will be doing a meditation later in the show. We'll be able to incorporate it into our conversation. But if you can proceed at like studying these practices and developing them further, again, like these are other ways to get to these quote unquote divine moments of truth. Like I think that's a very interesting thing that we didn't just call tonight's episode DMT, the drug, or whatever, right? You know, putting that label on it. Tonight's title is Divine Moments of Truth, and there's a lot of different ways that we can get to those quote-unquote divine moments of truth, and obviously that can sound like a very subjective thing, but if you have had experiences with your own divine moments of truth, this is just a friendly reminder to feel free to call in later in the show during the second half if anybody would like to share any sort of divine moment of truth that they've experienced. That's what this show is about. This show is about us as a platform to be able to document what we've experienced. So, yeah.
I think that's very important because, you know, the more information that's out there, the more you can see kind of a wider spectrum of patterns and experiences, you know. So when you enter, it doesn't necessarily astound you. You're kind of expecting it, something a little bit, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's always good to prepare. The setting and intention is very, very key because it really expands upon who you are the moment you enter. So it's very important, you know, to have a true understanding of consciousness and the unconscious, because the unconscious is what's sort of manifested before you. And if you don't have grips on that already, it can really be very powerful and aggressive towards you, you know?
Yeah, for sure, man. Like that's one thing, definitely with the DMT experience, having had that experience myself, and I've mentioned this in past episodes on the show. I've talked about it, but I'll talk about it a bit more in this episode. Yeah, like it's something that you do just want to be able to approach with a certain level of maturity, a certain level of respect. Rather, if you can respect not only the whether the plant that you're working with, but also the process, and this can be as simple as things, even just working with marijuana. And again, we don't even really talk about that on the show, just and that's partly because it's just like illegal connotations and everything like that. But just to touch upon it briefly, because again, like that is another way of experiencing a divine moment of truth. That in itself, if you can approach the idea of working with cannabis as, notice what I just said. Notice how I said working with cannabis. Like, notice the language that I use rather than just saying like, just go like smoke a bowl and get high. Like that's, if you consider
what does that mean? Get
look
high?
at it as your.
What does that mean? Get high? That's like you're like connecting with something that's higher above you. That heaviness you feel, like the weight of the universe. So you're sort of connecting to it. So like for me, cannabis is really a big part of enhancing my creativity and connection to the imagination.
Absolutely, man. I definitely agree 100%. And like let's smoke a bowl and get higher connected with our higher self. But again, it's such, I'm just, people may hear stuff like that and then you get like this schism. So we just want to be able to respect the ally, the plant ally, whatever it be, whether it be like marijuana, whether it be like the mushrooms or just anything else.
Yeah,
so.
I do feel like these plants do have like a spirit, and you're connecting with it, and it's sort of like a relationship with it. And with any relationship, you can abuse it, or you can have a great connection with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's finding the balance. It's finding the balance.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated how there's stories of indigenous cultures who talk about that, who talk about how they actually engage in a meditative state where they communicate with the plant and they talk to the plant and they say like, hey, what, basic question, like what are you supposed to do? What are you used for? What are you good at? Because in the same way plants are good at particular things, so are humans, so are we. Like you're really good at being a bassist for a kick-ass metal band, and I can like make an okay film every now and then. So I mean, everybody's got their key. Everybody's got something that they're good at. In the same way that these plants, they have a key that, in a very interesting way, has a unique effect when it interacts with us. Which
it's very
I
individual.
think if you. Yeah, like, if you're just really just pulling this back for a second to like a higher dimensional perspective of like everything, being aware of everything, like that oversoul kind of consciousness, like are these plants like there like specifically for the integration of like our conscious experience? Like like which came first, the drug or the human brain? Like it's but it's brains go back even way back in the day. So yeah.
Right. So, and then we see it like in ancient artwork. We see it in the ancient monuments. All these, the Mayans, the Egyptians, they were all traced and rooted in with the whole psychedelic movement or experience. Somehow they were in tune and in touch with the universe and the cosmos, and it's reflected in their artwork and their buildings, and that's how they had this higher level of consciousness and understanding of how the universe worked.
Yeah,
and that's part of how I got into the whole DMT thing, because I was really always being into like the whole supernatural and ancients, and I really got into Graham Hancock. He had the book Fingerprints of the Gods, and then he came out with a book called Supernatural, Meetings with the Ancient Teachers of Mankind. And in this book, that's where the first time I saw the three letters DMT, and at that moment, like everything just got crystal clear. Like I was just like there was like a moment of clarity, like an epiphany, like everything just made sense for a moment. Like I understood how this tied in with consciousness and God and the universe and everything, And I realized that as a teenager, I had some really deep mystical experiences, with these plants, and I dismissed it as a dream as a teenager. But now, looking back on it, I realized that I had these powerful mystical experiences,
Yeah.
So starting from that point on, I just really started researching it, listening to Terence McKenna, Alan Watts, just anything revolving consciousness and unconsciousness. I just dove really, really deep into the whole subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that just came to mind back when we were just sort of talking about like the earlier cultures and the expression that they had in their art and how even that was very psychedelic. Yeah, like it's again, like the great thing about paradigm shifts and the conversation we have is that think of it as like a helix. Like oftentimes our conversation will go out, it will come back, it will go out, it will come back. So there's like certain things that we're like kind of hitting across. We're kind of weaving a giant web, a giant tapestry through conversation in this show. So listen to this now and then like go back and listen to it again, having seen the picture in a bigger picture. Having heard it the first time all the way through or whatever. But what I was just going to say is that with the DMT experience, what you see, the best way that I can sort of explain it, again, from my own experience, or at least one way that you can have the experience associated with it, is that if you're still looking around this reality that you're in. So, for example, if I'm sitting at my desk and I'm not like totally blast off inside my mind, but rather the DMT like is activated and it's pulled back these filters, because again, that's how I commonly explain it, is that DMT is the process of like pulling back the filters that are always naturally like on to create this illusion, and that's where you get the idea that reality is an illusion. And again, reality is not as cut and dry density wise too. But what I was just saying is, within this sight, within this ability to see the code of the matrix, if I were to use that metaphor, you see that it is like sacred geometry, very, very much so, sacred geometry and fractals. And what I was just saying back to the comment about the indigenous cultures is that it seems that without as much like societal filters, they too are like naturally already like closer to this genuine like this truth, like this not divine moment of truth, but like this divine truth, which in itself is like sacred geometry, so to speak. And just to finish this thought, like what I was really interested in was how I believe it was particularly the Mayans, but like some of the bases for their pyramids were specifically built around proportions of sacred geometry. So I always wondered whether that was something that they did intentionally or intuitively. If you can see my like subtle difference sort of thing, right? Like it was just a natural expression that came through them. Yeah, go ahead.
They definitely still had something that was driving them to do it that, I think was inspired by this other worldly connection, They definitely, it's kind of the imagery, they show like these deities and all these different beings and so forth, So it seems like they had a connection to these type of beings, Even like Graham Hancock writes this book called War God now that kind of brushes on the whole subject about how the Aztecs were in contact with the deity that was inspiring them, and they connected through the mushroom, and that's what inspired them to do all these bloody sacrifices and so forth. So throughout culture, throughout history, that connection to the psychedelic has still been there. Even today in the Amazon forest, the shamans still use DMT and enter these altered states of consciousness and help people deal with the unconscious and their own personal evolution as a human being and a human spirit,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And okay, let me just on that note, I'm just going to sort of take a second to steer the ship in terms of show-wise. So what I'd actually like to be able to do, because we do have a sample from your EPK promo for your metal band, and I'd love to be able to share that. And then after that, we'll get into some more conversation. And I do have a clip of some of Terence McKenna giving an account of a DMT experience, one like subjectively based on what he went through, but in a sense gives you a very good explanation of what the process is like. Yes,
exactly. Very articulate and very definitive, so you can almost get an image of what he was saying.
Yeah, he was very good with his words. Yeah, definitely. It sparks the imagination. So we're going to be playing some of that. You guys tell me. I mean, the clip itself is 8 minutes, and it was originally like a 12-minute clip, but I have like 8 minutes of it. But I want you guys to be able to listen to enough of it just to really get into the Terence McKenna vibe and the image that he is painting for you. So we'll do that later in the show. You guys let me know if 8 minutes we cut it down on that. But some of the stuff that he gets into later stuff, I'll be touching upon in terms of creating things with our voice, literally like material form. So Crazy stuff, but we'll get to that later on in the show. For now, Alistair, one of the things that we touched upon was just the idea that like some people when they think of like metal music, they think of this like no man, like it has like low vibrations, get that stuff away from me. Like what is your reaction to a comment like that may show up within the online here and there or whatever, right? Everybody's got their taste,
right.
so.
Well, everybody's got their taste, not everybody likes horror movies, not everybody likes roller coasters. Definitely metal music is the one end of the spectrum as far as music, But as far as our music, we're a little specific. We're really trying to create music that pulses like with the human energy field. As far as like the DMT experience, as far as my perception of it, it felt very aggressive, and that's kind of how the music we write, it pulses with that energy. So also as far as like anytime somebody kind of resists something, I always point at, we should really look within ourselves and see what it is that's making us feel that way, And a lot of times that always just stems into fears and resistance. And so this music sort of kind of forces you to release yourself, sort of like the DMT experience. You really have to like surrender to it in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you guys, by the looks of it, have some killer live sets just in terms of the graphics and the imagery that you incorporate into your sets.
Yeah, we got lucky. We're working with the visionary artist Khan Hizm. He's from Turkey, so he does all our artwork. He did this visionary animation for us that we project behind us. So we're trying to kind of bring up that whole imagery into the whole live stage show as well.
Cool, man. Cool, yeah, because a lot of people are familiar with Tool, and that's something that I think that is an important thing just to touch upon, because again, like they Tool. You tell me, has Tool like publicly talked about any of the ayahuasca experiences that they had? Because like based on my understanding, like I believe it's 10,000 Days was actually put together after they came back from like, or at least some of them came back from like doing ayahuasca in the Amazon. Have you heard that? Maybe that's
if he did, he's not very public as far as his experiences,
No.
He keeps it more cryptic in his music. When you read his lyrics, you can tell it's written by somebody who's been in that realm or experience.
That's what I mean, yeah.
Well, that's why people connect to it. It's really deep down and connects on an emotional level.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's what you get in a lot of their imagery. And obviously, again, for people thinking of Tool, you automatically think of Alex Grey in most cases, and Alex Grey is like the iconic visionary artist for our times, and that's maybe a big thing to say, but I think it is.
Yeah, I got a chance to meet him once, and I even told him about my experience, and his advice to me was to take it to the next level.
Take it to the next level, man. Cool, man. All right, so that sets us up for some of the clip that we got here. So do you want to just explain to us what this is? Because we got some sound samples sort of worked in together from this EPK promo.
This is our EPK promo put together by our director, who's made 2 other videos with us. His name is Lord Zane, and it's like 4 minutes. It's got some sound clips of us talking from various interviews, and it's got a couple of our little hook parts of our music, so it's a good representation of who we are.
Cool, man. All right, so from Alistair himself, the vocalist and bassist of DMT, and do you guys you're not called DMT the band or anything, you're just DMT, and then...
We're just DMT, straight to the point,
Straight to the point, man. Blast off. So facebook.com/DMT music, and the other website that you can go to is, Alistair, help me out with that real quick. DMTmetal.com. Yeah.
Exactly, DMTmetal.com.
DMTmetal.com, and check out some of the visualizations at youtube.com/DMT music channel. And we'll post those links in the live chat while you guys are listening to this. So again, this is DMT sample on Paradigm Shift Radio, and enjoy. And again, for those of you who may not be totally used to metal music, just consider this a chance for it to be a reflection of yourself, right? Everything's a mirror, so enjoy either way. All right, we'll be back.
It's not that the music itself is something you listen to with the DMT experience, but DMT is more about the message, with our own personal mystical experiences. It's kind of powered us to push a message through and just bring more awareness to these altered states of consciousness that actually expand who you are.
We as DMT hope to bring to the forefront how important it is to have a unique life experience, as opposed to just letting life pass you by, imprisoned by maybe a particular belief system that's structured by fear and driven by ego.
We were really inspired by the book called DMT, The Spirit Molecule, which was written by Dr. Rick Stossman, which was a book that was written about this clinical study into what DMT is. DMT is a chemical that your body makes every night when you go to sleep, and that's actually why you dream. If you think about it, dreams are hallucinations. So when I read this book, like a light bulb went off. It was really like a moment of clarity. I realized like this answered a lot of things as far as if there's spirituality, if there's God and existence and the whole thing. And we were in this metal band and we just brought this into it, and I introduced it to all the guys, and we all just really understood it and kind of built up upon that. We really are like trying to tap into the energies of the universe, and it's flowing through us, and we're transcending and expelling it out onto the people, and watching the crowd and the whole swirling of the crowd. That's like the forces of the universe at work right there.
Because it's about the collective whole. It's not just about us. It's about everybody. And what else is life other than experiencing it with other people and hoping that you come across somebody that's like that ignition source for you to ignite some type of spiritual flame, and give you a new perspective.
All right, so for all you metalheads, I hope you enjoyed that. And that was DMT, facebook.com/DMT Music. And we have Alistar live back with us here tonight on Paradigm Shift Radio. So, yeah, that was pretty sweet, man. Like, metal gets me pumped.
Thanks. Just listening, like, it just inspired myself. So that video is on YouTube, so you can see it on our channel, at DMT Music channel. So it's got some live clips and stuff incorporated in it also.
Cool, man. And yeah, like you guys have opened up for quite a few bands too. Do you want to mention that real quick?
Yeah, we just finished playing at the All Stars tour a couple weeks ago, and then we played with Korn and a lot of the big bands. We try to jump on the festivals out here. So mainly we're located in Southern California, and that's where we mostly play most of our shows right now.
Cool, man. Cool. All right. So, yeah, like just in terms of that, anything else that you want to mention in terms of your music, or should we move on to some of the actual DMT experiences that I think both of us are willing to share tonight, again, as like ambassadors of people who have gone through that experience. So.
Right. So it's all incorporated together. You know, my music has been inspired by my own, personal experiences, and, how we interact with the whole band, and how the whole band, how itself is evolving into something else too. So the whole creative process is very what drives me,
Yeah.
Going.
I like what you had mentioned earlier in our previous conversation. You explained your music itself as being like an alchemical fire, a chance to burn away our ego. So
right, because a lot of the lyrics are really kind of in your face as far as confronting your ego, your shadow, the unconscious. Most people want to embrace the ego, which the ego is the role we play. It's not necessarily who we are. It's like this image that we create and we try to uphold it. But as far as like awakening and consciousness, that is more about understanding the whole spectrum of the self, because only then can a really empowered being make choices, conscious choices, to that improve their life.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure, man. And whoops, sorry about that. Well, I'm just kind of looking at a couple things. Yeah, sorry, man. Like, I was just kind of like reading stuff at the same time. But yeah, I was just saying, like, in terms of in terms of like metal music, like I think it is a really cool place to be able to have these sort of discussions and just to be able to create a community and an environment like around it. Like it's I haven't been to too many metal shows, but the ones that I have been to, I've definitely really enjoyed. So for anybody listening to this who maybe hasn't really given metal a chance, give it a chance. And if you have a chance to go see a band like Tool or DMT live, then that would be a wonderful thing to add to your repertoire of stuff that you've done in this lifetime. So it's moments like that again, like listening to music, being at a Tool concert, being at a DMT concert, like those in themselves are ways to get glimpses and tap into those divine moments of truth for yourself. So
exactly, it's just really about the experiences, and that's what's key. A lot of people get stuck on words and images, and it's really the experience that expands who we are.
Mhm. Cool, man. All right. So with that said, in terms of the experiences that we've had ourselves, I think it's interesting because again we were talking about this earlier, and I guess before we really get into this, let's just try and give a base level explanation as to what DMT is. For people who listen to Paradigm Shift Radio, like one of the things that we always try and reinforce is this idea of making knowledge accessible. So perhaps like in the first half of the show, I don't think up until this point we've really given like a good explanation as to what it is. But again, like that's just us as humans trying to use words to like make sense of something. But if you would approach it from the material, scientific, what we kind of know of it so far, one of the ways that you could think of DMT, and Alistar, feel free to like help me out in this, like DMT can, and again, science has never really been like super my field or anything, but like DMT can be extracted from like common grass, and it's in a lot of stuff. The extraction process is quite intricate, and it does like result in a powder being created out of it, and it's just this yellowy crystally powder, kind of like the same type of crystals, the trichones that you get on marijuana as well, just like a more clustered form of that. And there's multiple ways to experience DMT. Those of you in the past, you've heard this idea of like us talking about ayahuasca. That was in a past episode, and DMT is an ingredient within the ayahuasca brew, which is several plants in themselves because it's in one of the particular plants in that brew. And in the same way, like it can be done as a tea there. That's how you get it into your body, it interacts. But the other way of doing DMT is the idea that when you've extracted it down to this crystal form, it's something that can be smoked. And dimethyltryptamine is the name of the chemical formula that it is. But the thing that's really the kicker here, and I'll pass this off to Alistar, is the idea that based on studies that have been looking towards this direction, there is this idea, and it's also throughout ancient cultures, and we'll talk about that just in terms of the experience. This is idea that DMT is the same experience, the same process, the same chemical reaction, if you want to call it that occurs when we sleep each night, and when we're particularly born, and when in particular we die eventually. So yeah.
Right. So there's a certain hypothesis for us. So DMT is considered to be the spirit molecule by some. Dr. Rick Strassman wrote the book called DMT, The Spirit Molecule, and I know there's a documentary out with the same name. And it's definitely a chemical that everybody's body makes, and so that's why there's this hypothesis that it's the source of why we dream. Because if we really, really look at dreams, we've all had a dream that was so vivid that we woke up and we were like, that was real, like it was so real. And the reason is that dreams are hallucinations. and there's this psychedelic chemical our body makes called DMT, and they believe it's made every night when we sleep, and possibly when we die and when we're born, and it has something to do with it's possibly created in our pineal gland, and that's where considered our third eye, the seat of our soul, and where the soul kind of enters and exits the body in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is like this, the pineal gland, and you'll hear about this again if just do this research on your own. But yeah, it's seated right in the middle. So I mean, if a spirit, if a soul, if this external awareness, if like a signal being broadcasted and received would come in through anywhere, it would make sense for it to be right in the middle of the brain and the nervous system and be relatively close to the part that's going to be controlling the rest of the other parts, which is our body, right? So, yeah, it's this really interesting process when you think about the idea that this body is just a vehicle. We've talked about this numerous times on the show, but for me, and for a lot of other people, that in itself is like one of the big paradigm shifts, just really getting this idea that we are more than our physical body. Like we are like the conscious like observer, like observing, and we were talking about this in previous episodes, like the distinction between ourselves and the mind and the horse and the jockey, and not believing that we are actually the centaur, but like but what I'm trying to say here,
energy.
Go ahead,
that activates our body. It's like the energy that activates our body, and that can be seen as our spirit.
Yeah, no, that's wow. I've when you say activate, like, because when you think of lack of activity, you think of no motion, which is like a corpse, right? So, I mean, but that's what literally happens. We see that all the time through death. Like something comes into this body and something eventually goes out of it, and where it's going out and in through, in theory, yet in the best guess, and in a place that ancient cultures are commonly referred to, it's taking place right in the middle of the brain. And when it does this, every time it goes through this gate, this star gate, which is, I think, a great way to think of it, the DMT, the chemical, is produced. And I mean, the DMT is not the experience. The DMT is the part that allows the experience to occur. It is like the lubricant for something else to like be able to move efficiently. Does that make sense?
Right. Definitely. Yeah. No, it definitely makes sense. So as far as the DMT, and when it enters you, it's very specific, to who you are. So it's just like dreams. Dreams are usually very specific to you and what's going on in your life, and certain people in your life. So it's very, very similar. And like you start seeing these patterns starting to connect. You start seeing how dreams sort of interconnect with imagination and with the whole psychedelic thing also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, I mean, you mentioned, I guess it was you in the EPK promo that we played, and you said it again, the idea that dreams are hallucinations. For me, just one thing just because I've thought about this, I think people commonly, our definition of hallucination is kind of not consistent in the sense that, for me at least, hallucination doesn't mean that it's like any less real. If anything, when you're looking at it from like through the mirror from the other side, it alludes to this idea that everything is equally unreal. Like everything is a byproduct of the imagination. Like the imagination is like the nation of the magi or whatever, and we are like individually the wizards of like our individual Oz's, or the gizzards of Oz is a funny term that came up in conversation the other day. Like gizzards, like the things that we use to follow our intuition, but birds have them as well. Well, we don't have them, only birds have them. So follow your gizzard, kids, is what I'm trying to say.
It's part of like part of the whole awakening paradigm shift movement is also carrying the understanding that the outer world that we see is also an inner creation within us. A lot of people don't understand how the eyes work. We think we're just looking out like through binoculars, at an outer world, where really we're taking in light, and we're taking in this energy and information, and it's being, this almost holographic image is being created within our mind. There's like this, what we see outside is actually an inner world creation. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't really carry with them. Because if you really understood that everything was created within you, then you could see how maybe your thoughts and your own power or empowerment can influence the creation that's right before you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does. I think, like, definitely, because I mean,
like a different
go ahead.
mindset in order to really get into the whole realm of magic and getting out there and really co-creating life. You know, that's what awakening and empowerment is being able to co-create life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that Terence McKenna talks about in one of his experiences. Okay, well, actually, no, before we get there. Okay. So we'll do that. We'll play some of the Terence McKenna audio clip, and he sort of takes you through some of the DMT experience. So the other explanation is just, again, going back to this idea that, like, DMT in this crystal form is something that you can smoke, though you commonly don't like put the flame to the crystal. Like, you can smoke it from like the glass bowl underneath, which is like one method of doing that. And then when you inhale, and it's funny because, like, I mean, for someone who's had the experience, what we're talking about here is that, like, your third eye, it literally is something that you see this world with, is what I'm trying to say. We don't really realize that, and sometimes it may literally be because it's, like, not open in the same way, but it is always receiving information. So in the same way that, like, energy does not bounce off of our eyelids theoretically. Like, energy, like, can literally pass through our eyelids, but it's just when we have them closed, like, it appears as if it's not right in front of us. But with the third eye, with the pineal gland, so again, like, the pineal gland is the quote-unquote third eye. What it does, part of what it does, is that it literally sees the energy that we don't always see when we're at, like, base level reality. When we're sober, if you want to call it that, we don't see, like, we see empty space, but we think that there's nothing in it, when in reality there actually is. And going back to what I said earlier, that is filled by the code of the matrix, and the code of the matrix is what we are, and what we are is literally like sacred geometry and infinite light unfolding upon itself, and it's crazy, incredibly beautiful. And that's what we see glimpses of through artwork by people such as Alex Gray, such as all of these other transformational artists who are emerging, and in the same way that, like, the ancients, like, saw, like, similar things. So when you
even the whole realm of quantum,
go ahead.
Even the whole realm of quantum physics and everything touches on the whole multiple dimensions, and brings a lot of that energy and so forth, you know, and imagery. You know, they can create a lot of that psychedelic patterns just with, you know, algorithms and certain, you know, formulas, and you know, and a lot of that stuff you see in that realm, you know.
Yeah, actually, that definitely makes me want to share this link, or just remind people to check it out, because if you want to get almost like a feel for what, like, this reality is at, like, a base level, go to ParadigmShift.com and then go on the tab that says everything else, and then click on the cosmic hexagram. And I'll post a link for that for the people in the live chat, because you can watch this while listening to this show. And actually, I think it would be a great thing to use for the meditation as well, if you feel like doing an open-eyed meditation. But people, ParadigmShiftCentral.com/hexagrid, HXAGRID. So if you're at a computer, check that out now. You'll understand why once you take a look at it. And again, that's just like an algorithm that is a hexagram, but it's like breathing in, like, this grid. But that is very reminiscent of the structure that you see when your third eye is open. And again, I don't want to just say, like, that's what you see when you smoke DMT. Like, again, when you smoke DMT is one way to get at that, but imagine being able to, like, access this through other ways, or just being able to know this through other ways. So yeah. Alistar, what else do we have to say about the DMT experience itself?
I know, I believe, like, a lot of the literature and a lot of people believe that meditation also sort of activates our own inner DMT. You know, when we're in deep transcendental meditation, we're actually, you know, tapping into your pineal gland, the third eye, and activating our own DMT in a sense. So, you know, a lot of mystical experiences are really tied into a lot of religions. You know, that's like the core beliefs of most mainstream religions have to do with like mystical experiences, even like the Christian church.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I'm just kind of thinking back to the idea that I said that the third eye is a stargate, and because it is this point where we can blast off into other dimensions. Like, as ridiculous as it sounds, that's kind of like what actually happens, and we blast off through these internal stargates. Because again, what I was saying about astronauts and psychonauts going within, but what I was just going to say is that it's very interesting when we look at our eyes, and some people always make the connotation of, hey, ever notice how our eyes look like they're black holes? Well,
right.
What are black holes? And I'm just kind of pointing you in a direction. You can sort of see there's already this connotation of, like, our eyes look like black holes. Eyes are eyes. The pineal gland is an eye, and therefore it's something that, like, our soul can jump through. Because, I mean, if eyes are one form of a stargate, who's to say there aren't other forms of stargates? And who's to say that the pineal gland isn't this very specific form that we go in and out of every single night? And that's something that you can actually experience when you're in, like, the lucid dreaming exploration phase of things, and you're, like, in that state where you're starting to fall asleep, and you feel that sensation of you moving without actually physically moving, because the other side of our consciousness has, like, this ability to sense motion through other dimensions, it seems. And I think that's something Alistar and I have experiences with the DMT experience. But what I was just saying in terms of, like, the lucid dreaming thing, and in terms of this bigger picture of what is actually happening here, take notice when you're sleeping at night, and if you're trying to, basically, what you're trying to do, it's similar to it is kind of astral projection, or just going into a dream lucidly, trying to keep your mind awake while your body falls asleep. And if your mind's awake and your body falls asleep, you'll be able to observe the actual moment when something happens with your third eye, and that something is, like, your consciousness starting to, like, move somewhere, go out of it, and you feel it. Alistar, do you know what I'm talking about? Like, that sensation?
Yeah, I do.
That drop or that lift?
I remember as a kid, a couple times having these weird moments where I was, like, half asleep, half awake, and I could truly feel like I was a kid, and I could feel I was, like, flying around the room. And as I jumped back in my body, I got really freaked out. I was a kid. I woke up and I screamed, and I remember my parents walked in, and I remember the whole feeling of being, like, stuck in between dimensions. Like, I felt like my parents were, like, kind of going and coming away, and it just really freaked me out. And it wasn't until I did Salvia Divinorum that I remembered that same feeling. Salvia Divinorum is another psychedelic that we haven't really talked about.
No, we haven't touched on that. I it's funny because there's actually a video of my experience with Salvia on the internet, and I literally haven't talked about it on the radio show at all. But one of the interesting things that I will, because there's time and a place for everything, and now's the time. But what I'll just mention from it real quickly, because people can find it under the Raw Skull playlist of my YouTube, youtube.com/SkullBabylon. And the reason why I made that Salvia video is because Salvia is legal. But what I'll just mention what I got out of it, because I could talk about it for a while. One thing in particular is that I actually had, like, my third eye open, and I could actually see stuff around me while my eyelids were closed. So, like, at this point, like, this is what the plant was showing me. This is, like, what it was teaching me. I was like, holy shit. Like, actually, I can actually see things with my third eye. And my eyelids were closed, and I was like, dude, are my eyes closed right now? Because I can still see things. And, like, that's how real it was, for me, at least. Yeah.
Right.
So
did you feel that it was kind of DMT-like, or did you feel it was different?
It was quite different. I talked about that, just the idea that these different psychedelics, I tried explaining them this way. They're almost like different flavors of perception, was one way I explained it.
Like different slices, of reality,
Yeah.
And they're sort of similar, but they're just a little different,
Yeah.
And
so
like different plants, so maybe it has to do with different plant spirits in between each one, It's really strange. But I remember that when my Salvia experience was just kind of a test run before I did the DMT, because I just wanted to make sure I was going to really go through with this. And I remember taking the hit of Salvia, and just instantly it felt like, I don't know if you've ever stuck your head into, like, a hot attic, just like the whole change of the energy of everything, It just was like an instant, like I poked my head into something else, and I looked at it, and I was like, okay, now I get it. And I just opened my eyes and started to shake it off, I was like, I get it, feel that, all right, I understand. And I had this whole deja vu feeling. It was like I felt like I was there before, and it just was. That's why I said it reminded me of when I was a kid, and it just the whole feeling. Just speaking about it right now kind of brings up a little bit of that energy,
Yeah, man. With these psychedelic experiences, one of the things that's really particular to them, and especially the DMT one, and this is where it correlates to the dream idea, is that we as in our current form, or at least the part of ourselves that we're aware of at this moment, have a very hard time holding on to solid memories of these experiences, in the same way that when you wake up from a dream really quick, your dream just sort of falls through your fingers. And Terrence McKenna, he talks about it, and he says that, it's like liquid gold running through your fingers when he's referring to the DMT experience. After you come out of it, you're just like, I don't know if we'll get all the way through that audio clip, because it's like an 8-minute audio clip, but I'll have to find it on YouTube. But there's just a part where he says at the end. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't think it's really important that we remember it. It's just more of the process going through the experience. I think that alone changes you, So it's not that we have to cling to it, it definitely roots you into the present moment. And for me, it really makes me appreciate being alive a lot more now. Now that I look out at everyone, I can see the divine spirit in everyone, and that instantly makes everyone equal. It's from even seeing criminals, it's you can see there's unconscious forces working through everybody. So it's hard, we're not supposed to be judging people, as far as if you're trying to reach higher levels of consciousness. Mm-hmm. So you really have to accept that we all carry that spectrum within us. We all have darkness, we all have light. So it's really about finding that balance within us,
Yeah, man. There's so many. There's a lot of different experiences in this reality for sure, man. And I mean, DMT is when I say I think it's very cool that DMT and divine moments of truth are that phrase is the letters DMT, because I think if I can't imagine it being any other way. That's just super synchronistic about it. But I mean, with these experiences, one of the things that's very interesting about the DMT experience, that's again partly each experience sort of varies in a way, but one of the things that's very interesting about the DMT experience is the idea that when you go into the experience, you're still very much yourself. You're still very much aware of kind of what is you're still Brendon is still Brendon when he goes through, if that makes sense.
You still feel how you feel right now, but it's just the whole world.
Everything else is different.
Change. Yeah. Right. So, but that makes you change how you feel, because you really are experiencing this, and you're reflecting on what you're seeing in a sense.
Oh man, I'm just getting sort of waves. You're right though. That's what makes it so real. It's not you feel you're oh man, I'm just tripping out. You're just holy shit, this is real, and I'm experiencing it in this moment. Nothing's being, this is real. This is that divine moment of truth. That's the one thing I got with DMT, is just how real it was. It was just so incredibly real, so incredibly and again, we can't, for people listening to this, if you haven't seen DMT, if you haven't, well, I mean, again, dreaming and stuff, that's one way of perceiving it, but I mean, through the other ways of perceiving it, through the method of smoking it, you can, there's colors that you haven't seen. I know that sounds kind of cliched, but that's actually true. Alistar, do you know what I'm talking about?
A lot of the visionary artists, can capture little glimpses of it, but it's really hard, because it's all just constantly changing and transforming, so it's hard to really grasp it.
Yeah,
that's what I hold.
Yeah. And so, actually, you know what? I do have a clip here, and And I wasn't sure when I was going to play it, but I'll just play it now, just since we're in like a similar energy of it. And this is something that is actually pretty special. And then I still want to get to that Terrence McKenna clip, though we'll probably only just play the first 4 minutes of it and encourage people to check it out. And then we're still going to have our meditation. And just give people a heads up on this. Our meditation that we're going to do later is actually going to be the song Parabola by Tool at 800 times slower speed. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've seen this on the internet, but it's intense. Like how I'm there's no way that was an accident. I'm sure like Tool knew what they were doing when they did that, but you'll see. It is very reminiscent of
either
the
that or like
DMT experience I found.
Or either that or like what you said with the Mayans, that something sort of pushed them to create it. You know, I think, you know, with the artists, all these bands that came up with these epic
stuff
just
comes
songs,
through.
It just comes through, you know.
Yeah, man.
You know, people would say that Led Zeppelin sold their soul to the devil or whatever to write Stairway to Heaven, you know, but I know like a lot of these older bands, the Beatles and the Doors, you know, they all incorporated the whole psychedelic, their own experience, and it came through in the message of their music, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's our role with the artists. You hit along a really key point, and that actually does like set up this audio clip that I'm going to play. This is actually audio from my DMT experience. So for the people listening to this, like, this is just to like sort of set this up from my own experiences with DMT without actually telling the full story. My experience with DMT is that I smoked it, you know, again, I worked with it, I worked with the experience on a beach during a sunrise. So I'll say that was like my setting, and I was with good people. This audio clip is only audio of me. There's no audio of other people, and that's part of the reason why I can't really share more of it. This is just like a small snippet that I found. And through my experience, like I only took like one really good hit, but I had an MAOI inhibitor. So that basically meant that the experience of DMT, which normally, and this is something we didn't really mention, it normally only lasts about like 5 to 7 minutes, like less than that.
Sure. And
then you're kind of like back in normal reality. And again, you're just like, wow, like that was amazing. With the MAOI inhibitor, which is Syrian rue, another plant, it basically just allows the filters to come on slower. Because what is actually happening when you smoke DMT, as soon as you smoke it, the brain's instantly like working not against it, but like counterbalancing it. It's just like nope, and it's like putting the filters back on, and that's like why the intensity of like the hit is like at the peak, and then you're sort of like riding it more. But what I was just gonna say is that with the Syrian rue, I was able to still see the code of the matrix, again, if I can just refer to it as that, for a good like 25, 30 minutes. So this is me talking about a good like 20-ish minutes after my experience, and I'm just kind of like in the middle of a conversation, but it's just me talking, and I just mentioned some stuff about like art and just wanting to capture the experience. So again, this is actual recording of me from my DMT experience, which was quite a while ago, almost half a decade ago, almost. And just take it for what it is and resonate with where we are now. Like, keep in mind, I said this years ago. So, all right, here on Paradigm Shift Radio. We'll be back in a second. Enjoy. Like this just makes me want to create, man. This just makes me want to create art more than I ever have before. Like, as the artist, bring back a piece of this reality and put it into this tangible world where we can like appreciate it as art, but know that like what we're creating is not like it's more beautiful. It's equally as beautiful as the way that the universe naturally is on itself. Like all these patterns that I can see in the sky, like all these fucking like formations, that's like absolutely beautiful. The art that we'll create as artists is equally as beautiful, because it's kind of like this structure that's built out of this reality on itself, and it's just like it's amazing though. It's amazing how we piece together all these small pieces and make like new pictures out of it, you know? It's absolutely amazing. Yeah, like, and that's the purpose, to create these new realities. Literally, it's to create these imaginatory realities where we create a scenario and we can live it by looking at a picture and looking at a vision. All right, so coming back after that, Alistar, like, do you have any reaction to that?
So, you know, I can feel, and I've been around a lot of people that have done it, and it seems like DMT really connects you to like this higher level of consciousness, almost in a sense. You know,
literally,
McKenna refers to it as like the logos, there's like this inner voice that kind of speaks higher wisdom. And I think that's, part of the whole enlightenment, that's something that we're trying to shoot for. And I think that's why we bring this DMT into awareness, because, this is definitely a key or portal to that connection.
Yeah. Actually, there's a really cool idea. And I'm sure Graham Hancock maybe talks to it or alludes to it in some way or another. But it's actually this idea that I just feel very connected to, this idea that, going back to the plant having a spirit, in particular like ayahuasca or whatever, it's the idea that there's actually a conscious intention behind the plant to become more aware within culture and within consciousness itself at a particular time. So within the recent 2 years, more people have heard and found out about ayahuasca, and also heard and found out about DMT. Like, this is the DMT experience itself doing what it can to become more aware of, so more people can know about it. So more people can know that these experiences are real and that this world is absolutely incredibly beautiful. Like, that was one thing. I'll just fast this over to you, Alistar. Like, the one thing that really just, when I came back from my experience with DMT, I was just like, I just felt this really strong connection to my family and just a really strong connection to appreciation, because I'm just like, it's so beautiful. Like, this life is such a gift, and we let it pass us by so casually. But if we can just be reminded of how incredibly amazing this is and how amazing it is to, like, fall in love and to have people to care about, it just, it makes you step back. It makes you take a second to actually, like, breathe and just, hopefully people can do that. Hopefully people can just, like, hear this and just be reminded of that. Because if that's what DMT is encouraging us to do, from my point of view, then that is what I'm encouraging you to do, is just do whatever you can to connect with those divine moments of truth and really, really appreciate where you're at and where you're going and the people you're experiencing it with. So.
And, as far as, like, promoting it to other people, I really, as far as the awareness is, you really got to look at that spectrum of experience, because I think some people are not going to be ready for that confrontation with the unconscious. So, I did it 2 times. The first time I did it was just like yours. I felt so cosmic, divine. I felt connected. I felt great. Everything was beautiful. I was happy to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt all this, like, knowledge just kind of rolling through me. And then, but the second time I did it, I decided to do a heroic dose, because first time I did it, this voice that I was connected with sort of lured me, telling me I needed to do it again. So the second time, I'm like, I'm going to do it all the way. I did a complete hit and held it the right amount of time. I had done all the research. I knew what a heroic dose was, and it tricked me, because it was not gentle and divine the second time. The moment I laid back, it actually it had a more sinister feel to it, and it told me, you fucked up, game over, you're dead. And then I instantly went through this whole process of where I felt I had actually died. So I was actually going through the feelings and remorse, and I had like this life review kind of flash before me, like everybody I knew in my life just like flashed before me like a deck of cards right in front of me. And then, like, it was, like, gone, like just, I can't even describe that feeling, but just that feeling of not being able to come back, messed up. I have my kids, I have a family, I have a wife, I got, all my friends and this band and everything, and I messed up because I wanted to look too deep, and it just took me on this journey that I can't even, it's so hard to describe. It was like cut into different sections and varying in degrees and visions, that I'm actually writing a book about it called The Divine Moment of Truth. And it's just so powerful, all these different aspects that I experienced through it. But the first phase, as I was going through this cosmic thrust where I felt like, I was getting that life review, and it was, like I was just dissolving into this just pure energy. It's just fire and bright, powerful energy, and it almost like you black out, sort of like when you're going to sleep at night and you kind of black out into your dream, and then it kind of just blacked out into something else. And that's when I was like going through all these like spirals and portals, and just you see all these like tentacles and ferns, and it felt like being like you're in the ocean. Like I was just like deep, like I've just fallen deep in some ocean, and you just feel all the currents moving and everything's swaying, and it's just connected. And then there was like this huge, giant purple lotus that just started appearing before me. And there was like all these like Tibetan goddesses embedded within it, like in a fractal form, and she was like whispering to me, trying to connect with me, and it's like, what do you do with that, you know? It's like,
yeah,
I'm just, you're just there, you know, just this powerful energy right there with you, and you know, it's just like I remember it tried to reach out to me and connect with me. And it got this feeling of like, would you get like when water goes up your nose, you know? Like that. And I kind of like, I can remember like jerking away, you know, in a sense, and like I was pulling away, and it's like, well, you know, what do you do with that, you know? It's just, it's so weird and bizarre. But the way she was whispering to me and connecting with me, she was like, yes, you're doing good. Like, then she goes, pull me through. Like, she was telling me to pull her through. It was so weird, and you know, it's just bizarre. And then just like being in the ocean, like when currents crash, I remember that scene just crashed away, and then boom, there was this vision of Buddha right in front of me. It was like just his head, like far up ahead of me, like almost like looking down onto a football field in a stadium. And then, like, all these symbols were, like, all around his head, like all these little quantum symbols. And I remember you just staring at it, you know, and then poof, like, and then I'm back into that lotus, and then it just transforms and slowly starts to dissolve. And I can remember suddenly it started to turn into my wife, who was trying to wake me up from what she thought, you know, I was going through something really extreme.
Yeah.
Because from the outside point of view, I was actually it looked like I was struggling with something, and I was, you know, that it was powerful. So, you know, it's really good to hear these other experiences, because it's not all light, love, and light. There are, it's really powerful, and you really got to look into it, you know.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure, you know, I literally felt like I got that ego shamanic death rebirth experience, you know, because even after I started to wake up, it took like 10 minutes. I felt like I was still in between realms, kind of stuck. You know, I saw like my wife in full spirit form. I could see the beauty of her, you know, and it was pretty awesome. You know, I could see like the glow of her heart. I could see like this billowing around her skin, like
like the actual aura.
Her skin was like translucent, sort of like a jellyfish. You know, you could kind of see through it. And it's pretty powerful, you know. And just there looking at her, I'm just like, at that point, I didn't know it was her. It was like, because it was still transforming from, I thought I had died, and I'm just going through this whole process, you know. And there's just this being that's working with me, and she was like trying to wake me up. And I remember like being stuck in loops, or like she was just running away and coming back, and it's really bizarre, you know. And then finally, I started, you know, she was reminding me, you know, who I was, and things. It was like a reboot, you know. I felt like I got a reboot. Like everything got erased for a moment, and I slowly started to build it back up again. And it took a long time. It took days to really get my full senses restored. But ever since then, I'm still connected to that experience, you know.
Yeah.
It's still carrying it with me, you know. It's still there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. Sorry, go ahead.
And it empowers me, you know. I do a lot of writing on my Facebook. I have I do a lot of posts, and a lot of it is that inspiration that comes from that whole process of the experience.
Yeah. Like first of all, thank you for sharing that. I mean, moments like that is very amazing, and is also very personal, in the same way that like sharing a dream is very personal, because that's really what, again, making that connection between the DMT experience and the dream experience. If you do DMT and you're in this case, similar to what Alistar had done, and taking a, whether it be a heroic dose or whatever works for you, but then closing your eyes, specifically closing your eyes and going into that inner space. That's where you go when you dream. And in the same way, every night when we dream, we have to be like willing to embrace whatever dreams may come our way, because those dreams are always like a lesson. For me personally, the last few nights, or at least last night, I had like this just really intense dreams, in the same way that a DMT experience can be really intense. But at the same time, we have to walk out of both of them with an appreciation for whatever it was that came our way, understanding that, oh no, we are not a victim of this incredibly bizarre experience, but just to say, like, this is what I received, like, this is what it is, like, this is like what came to me, and then to be able to process it out of that. And again, if you can carry gratitude either way, even if it is a crazy quote unquote negative experience, then that's like, you chose that for yourself. And I
I remember at that moment, I was just like such a shock,
Yeah, really.
I was just like, whoa, I remember just telling my wife. I remember telling my wife, I don't know what that was. Like, I was just like, I didn't expect that much. I didn't expect it to be so powerful. I didn't. I mean, I knew it was there, but just feeling it, it's just puts you in a state of awe. It's just so powerful.
Yeah. It is, and that's again, words like powerful. I think that is a very appropriate word. It really is, and again, like, people. I think it's amazing, the idea that this powerful experience is something that all people do experience, whether it be through conscious awareness within their dreams. And again, write down your dreams, boys and girls. That's like a super key thing. And whether it be through like these experiences of working with the plant allies and so forth, or whether it be that moment when our soul shoots out of the Stargate in our mind that last time during death. Like, you see that in people's eyes sometimes when they go through death. You can just, people talk about like the white, like pearly gates, but what their words are referring to is just like this immense beauty that in often cases people go through that and there's like, oh my God, I was in heaven. Well, it's like, well, like, you're in a very similar place that you go to when you do DMT, but that's the point, because it's one and the same. It's like our spirit, our soul, momentarily fully existing, like, perspective wise within these other dimensional realities. And the thing that really gets me, and this is what you were talking about in your experience, is that the idea that there are other entities, there's other intelligences within these other realities that we can interact with. We can interact with like teachers during our dreams, and we can also run into other teachers within DMT experiences, and McKenna talks about this quite openly as well. And like, that's just a fascinating idea for me, that there's literally other intelligences in other dimensions, and part of what we can do is communicate with them. Because I think the key thing, and I'll just pass this off to Alistar, the key thing that I'm totally fascinated by is the idea that these other intelligences, these other entities, are learning from us too when we go through these experiences. Like, that's just like, whoa.
It's like with that experience that I was describing, it felt like that being was trying to interact with me, to tell me to pull through. There was like definitely some sort of, something was going on there, and there was some relationship. And, there's a lot of DMT reports and other psychedelic trip reports that are, on the internet, deoxy.org or wherever. But it is common, even some people see Jesus, some people, like I saw Buddha, there's a wide spectrum of what you're going to see. That's why I kind of bring that it sort of reflects who you are, or at least the energy that you're,
it is a reflection,
putting out into the world. Yeah, because once you have that whole spectrum of understanding, you have spirit, there's more to this life, suddenly you understand that everything you do here has so much more importance. Everything you say, everything you do is so important, It really does affect the outcome of what can happen on the other side, So I can see why people like you do this radio show. There's something that sort of drives us to want to do one of the
You're right.
the universal work in a sense. You say we're ambassadors of consciousness or whatever. Just doing our part to do that. We're just two small little drops, but even small little drops, we make little ripples, and that can affect and expand out. As far as it can go.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, ripples create waves.
We've seen people come through time, and their influence changed the whole course of humanity. So we all got that potential to tap into that.
Yeah, well said, man. Absolutely. Yeah, like this DMT experience, these divine moments of truth that we go through. I think if there's one thing that we can sort of connect back to, it's this idea that we are the creator of our realities. And one of the things that's amazing within the Terence McKenna audio clip, and I'll link to it in the show notes so people can listen to the entirety, because we won't get through all of it today, but we'll play that in the next couple of minutes, because we've had a really good conversation about DMT here, and I think it'll be good just to get some other voices such as McKenna's in here. But what I was going to say is this idea of us being the creator. Within the audio of Terence McKenna, he talks about this idea that the entities that he ran into were communicating to him this fact, this practice that you can use your voice to create form. This idea that you can create shapes, intricate geometric shapes and patterns with intention and voice. And that is something that do in the DMT realm, that they do, that these entities are already well aware of. It's part of their nature, and they're already telepathic, and they communicate through thoughts, and we are that, just with different properties, different densities to this particular dimension. But that one that we are interacting with, that's where things happen first. That's where things sort of come through, this idea that things sort of start off more nebulous, more cloudy, and then they crystallize to this density of where we are now. The one thing I was just going to say that in terms of synchronicity and everything, just emphasizing the fact that we are creators. Last night in my dream, I had a few dreams last night, but one of my dreams that I was actually doing Dragon Ball Z training, and I wasn't lucid, but I was still into it and everything. But the thing that was interesting that came up in my dream is that I was trying to do attacks, I was trying to shoot energy out of my hands, but it would only work when I would do a shout with it, some sort of spell casting word, kind of like Kamehameha and things like that, or abracadabra, things like that. It was actually my voice that made it happen. So go ahead.
I don't do magic or anything like that, but I can see now how magic works, and I can see how the words and if you say things in certain ways with certain intent, certain energy, you can influence the universe. I don't think you can necessarily change it. I haven't seen anybody change water into wine yet. But I think we can definitely influence it. And just our words alone, just even our words alone, just putting out little things, here and there, it does change. Words travel across the airwaves, enter our mind, and it's put together in our own head, and whether or not agree with it or not, we're still being influenced by it.
Yeah, and state the obvious within this whole conversation. I mean, being a musician yourself, I mean, being up on stage, for you, that must be an incredible experience. I mean, just tell
Very
us,
surreal.
What is that? Surreal, yeah.
The energy is very intense, being that we're aggressive music anyway. So the vocals are very growly. There's this vibration in the actual throat or above it. It's almost like the top of the mouth is the vibration, and it feels like this tremendous energy is just coming through, and I can see it when it goes to the crowd and the audience, and then people call it, starting a slam pit, or circle pit, where people start just moving in this circle form. It's energy. This is to me, when I see it, this is the universal forces at work. This energy is being expelled out, through us, and it's making people, move in this form. That's universal force right there.
Yeah.
Forces of nature.
Yeah, we are a force of nature. We are nature. So yeah, in the same way that the wind can move the trees, we too can move the world with our thoughts and our intentions. So yeah, cool stuff, man. Cool stuff. Each one of us is Neo, and we're waking up. So All right. Well, okay. Let's play some of that Terence McKenna clip, and just because I want people, I know not everyone knows who Terence McKenna is, which is that makes sense, I guess, because his prime time.
Some people call him the psychedelic prophet, because
really.
He was one of those people, he was connected with something. He could just talk hours on end and just go on about the forces of nature, the universe, and how it ties in with culture, society, and how he kind of makes you look at the world in a different way.
Yeah, so what we'll be doing here, we'll just be bringing on and honoring Terence McKenna. Obviously, those of you who know, Terence McKenna passed away back in a while ago. It was like early 2000s. And he has a lot that he talks about. So just YouTube Terence McKenna, just McKenna, and you'll find so much, and you can just like spend an afternoon just listening to him while you do other stuff. But this is, we'll just play the first little bit of this because we only got 25 minutes left in the show, and we're still going to get our meditation in as well, and going to close with some Alan Watts at the end. So we're going to mute ourselves here and just listen into Terence McKenna talking about the DMT experience in general, and in particular, he's already set this up. This is after taking a third toke. So this is when the gnomes say hooray. So, all right, Terence McKenna, you're listening to Paradigm Shift Radio. Enjoy. And listen to this again through YouTube for better sound quality in the future. Blog Talk always has like not good sound quality. So either way, enjoy.
Is you close your eyes and you see the ordinary warm brown closed eyelid scenario, and then these colors begin racing together, and it forms this mandalic, floral, slowly rotating thing, which I call the chrysanthemum. This is a place in the trip that you want to see as you go by it. The chrysanthemum forms, and you watch it for like 15 seconds. If it doesn't give way, then you didn't do enough. You have to do more. One more hit usually will do it. Well, then what happens is it like physically propels you through this chrysanthemum-like thing, and there's a sound like a saran wrap bread wrapper being crumpled up and thrown away, that crackle. A friend of mine says, this is your radio intellecty leaving through the anterior fontanelle at the top of your head. I don't know what it is, but it's something is being... Yeah, right, that's what it is. And then there's this very defined sense of bursting through something, a membrane. And on the other side, and this is now, remember, my experience, on the other side, as you break through, there's a cheer. There's a whole bunch of entities waiting on the other side. And they, that Pink Floyd song, The Gnomes Have Learned a New Way to Say Hooray. Well, it's that place. It's those gnomes. And you burst into this space, and they're saying, how wonderful that you're here. You come so rarely. We're so delighted to see you. And one of the things about DMT that's really puzzling is, in a sense, it doesn't affect your mind. In other words, you don't change. For instance, if you take ketamine, the very first thing you notice before the trip hits is you notice that you no longer are anxious about having taken ketamine. You just sort of, anxiety leaves you. That means it's affecting your mind. It's doing something to the judgmental machinery. DMT doesn't lay a hand on the judgmental machinery. You break through into that space exactly who you were before breaking through. And the usual reaction of most people is something like, and you think, God, heartbeat, normal, pulse, normal, everything's normal, everything's normal, oh God. Because these things are there, and they're hammering at you, and they come forward. They're like jeweled, self-dribbling basketballs. And there are many of them, and they come pounding toward you, and they will stop in front of you and vibrate, but then they do a very disconcerting thing, which is they jump into your body. They jump into your body, and then they jump back out again. And the whole thing is going on in this very high-speed mode, where you're being presented with thousands of details per second, and you can't get a hold on. You say, my God, what's happening? And these things are saying, don't abandon yourself to amazement, which is exactly what you want to do. You just want to go nuts with how crazy this is. They say, don't do that. Don't do that. Pay attention. Pay attention to what we're doing. Well, what are they doing? Well, what they're doing is they're making objects with their voices. They're singing structures into existence. These things are, and what they will do is they'll come toward you, and you have to understand, they don't have arms, so we're kind of downloading this into a lower dimension to even describe it. But what they do is they offer things to you. Say, look at this. Look at this. And as your attention goes toward these objects, you realize that what you're being shown is impossible. It's impossible. It's not simply intricate, beautiful, and hard to manufacture. It's impossible to make these things. The nearest analogy would be to the Fabergé eggs or something like that. But these things are like the toys that are scattered around the nursery inside a UFO or something. Celestial toys. And the toys themselves appear to be somehow alive. The toys themselves can sing other objects into existence. So what's happening is there's just this proliferation of elf gifts. And the elf gifts are moving around singing, and the whole thing is directed toward, they're saying, do what we are doing. And they're very insistent. They say, do it, do it, do it. And you feel like a bubble. And now this is subjective. I mean, only 5% report this, but it happens to me. You feel like some kind of bubble inside your body that's beginning to move up toward your mouth. And when it comes out, it isn't sound, it's vision. You discover that you can pump stuff out of your mouth by singing. And they're urging you to do this. They say, that's it, keep doing it. And the whole thing is like, we're now at minute 4.5 with this stuff. And you speak in a kind of glossolalia. There's a spontaneous outpouring of syntax unaccompanied by what is normally called meaning. It's sort of, he ding wow wak saptivi mudektivi tinget wahaksiti pipinem wahavedektam bohagayetek. And this is accompanied by a modality, something seen. And they're saying, yes, do it, do it, do it. And then after a minute or so of this, the whole thing begins to collapse in on itself. And they literally begin to physically move away from you. And usually their final shot is they actually wave goodbye and they say, déjà vu, déjà vu, which makes no sense at all if you analyze it. So then you come down. And you're now at minute 6 to 7. And you come down, and it's like being more loaded than you've ever been. It's like about a 700 mic acid trip. But you embrace it as totally down. You say, I'm totally down. I mean, you look like a termite from Arcturus, and the room is decorated in Amish quilts, but I'm completely back. And then, over a minute or a minute and a half or so, the room just comes right back together, And 4 minutes after that, some people can give no account of it whatsoever. They just say, I don't know. It was the weirdest thing that ever happened to me, and I can't remember it now. I don't know. It was the weirdest thing that ever happened to me, and I can't remember it now.
All right, so that was Terrence McKenna recorded talking about his personal subjective DMT experience, and
right.
that was I was smiling listening to that. Like, I'm glad we played the full thing. I could not stop that. Like, I was having too much fun in listening to it.
So you can see some of the similarities from your own experience,
Yeah.
So even though his was different, I remember my first experience was a little bit more like his too. I remember when I first entered, it was like really like here, like it was like, this is it, a divine moment of truth. So he said that in like this elfin voice, and it's like I entered this Alex Gray painting called The Net of Being. It was like the same thing. It's just like this big head. This is it. And I was just like, this is it,
Man. When I had like my first moment after taking it in and like that first moment when reality starts to change around you, similar to what Terrence McKenna talked about when he talked about this idea of breaking through something, I experienced that as well, and it was this process of what I was looking at in front of me. So normally if I was looking there and I was on base normal reality, I'd be looking at a beach. Well, I couldn't see a beach, but what I could see was an immense amount of like yellowness, and then that yellowness like turned into like red, and then like through that it was like a higher intensity, and then I like bursted out of it. It's like I went through a membrane. Like that's literally like what happened. And then you can see, and then in my case I could see the world around me, and obviously like the world around me was it was what it was. That's what I was trying to emphasize, is that what we see on DMT in some cases is like closer to the truth than what we see right now. But not to say what we see right now is less real. It's just that, like Terrence McKenna said, when you are in that experience on DMT, you're just like hyper information. It's too much. You can't process it. And that's what reality actually is. Reality actually is like super hyper. So what we of reality have done for ourselves, we've created this scenario where we've toned down the hyperness so that we can actually experience it in a way where we're not constantly like tripping balls 24/7, and we're able to like drive cars and put the dishes away, like mundane stuff that provides us with this incredibly beautiful experience in its own way. And the fact that this DMT experience is kept like a secret from ourselves is part of the experience. Like we are, this idea of we are gods with amnesia or whatever, like that is like the hidden part of ourselves that so many of us have forgotten about.
There's still these little hints that we ignore, like deja vu, synchronicities, coincidences. It's sort of like a calling card that there is this other connection, this other thing actually sort of pushing the currents around a little, and I think definitely DMT allows you to see these higher patterns. So the same thing, like if you're down at ground level, we each look at each other, we're individual, we're right there. But if you jump in an airplane and you go up high, when you look down, you don't see the individual anymore. You see like this higher pattern, you see the order of the houses and the electricity and everything, and you could see that there's something else higher going. And it's almost like the same pattern, like looking at ants, you can see ants busy doing their thing, I'm sure down at their level they think they're unique and individual, doing their own little thing. We just look down at ants and you just we say they connect with each other by invisible chemicals and all this stuff, but even with bees and everything, you see that there's this order, you see the flocks of birds that go around, everything just has this higher like a symphony, like harmony, but I see it more like a symphony, almost like music,
It is, man. It is one of the most beautiful things from my DMT experience that I got out of it was this idea of familiarity, this idea of doing it, and you're just like, wow, like I've been here before, like this, I remember this, like this is real, like this is the other side of what's going on, but it's so real, it's so there, and again,
it's
like that. Sorry, go ahead.
I think it's sort of rooting us back to how we were as children when the world was more magical, and I think we sort of lose that connection. I have two little small kids, and I can see how they look at the world like it's magic. It's all new, to them, and that's just so inspiring. Like, it reminds me of that connection also.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think we've covered quite a bit of ground here on tonight's episode, and I'd still love to be able to get into our meditation with our parabola by Tool at 800% slower speed. And one thing that I will mention with my own experience with DMT and alluded to in others is that your audio changes too. Like, how you hear actually becomes more hyperdimensional. When I was bursting through, that was one thing I very particularly noticed and clearly remember, was the idea that, like, I was talking because I was with friends, and I was just like, oh, okay, everything's changing right now, whoa. But what I noticed is that as things began to change, my sound of my own voice was reverbing. So I was like, instead of hearing myself, I was hearing like, whoa, man, like things are getting a little trippy, like these ripples, and that's again alluding to this idea that we even have filters like on our ears or something like that, in the same way that sound is even more complex, in the same way that our visual spectrum is more complex. Everything's very neatly filtered for our convenience, but yeah.
And I think it's about how you saw that kind of that connection. You saw that there wasn't any empty space when you were in that zone, and
I see sound.
So you can still even carry that with us now. Even though you're in London, I'm in Los Angeles, but we're connected instantly right now. It's like
totally, man.
And shows how much little the body's needed for that connection.
Yeah, and this is why we do what we do, man. Like, this is why, like, we do what we do, because we're infinitely connected to other people through the inspiration that we bring into our lives, and that, again, ripple out. So for everybody listening to the show tonight, thank you guys for listening in, and the show is not over yet. I would encourage you guys to, if you haven't yet, like, check out that paradigmshiftcentral.com/hexagrid, because if you want, you can try open-eyed meditation, looking at that while listening to our meditation, just as something to try for yourself. Another thing I was going to recommend is the idea of visualizing the paradigm shift sigil in your mind, and sort of focusing and going through that as like a portal in a Stargate, and seeing what divine moments for truth you can sort of find for yourself. And again, if you just go to paradigmshiftcentral.com, check out the banner at the top of the page, and it even like pulses and goes in a wave sequence with you. So before we go into this meditation, we'll go into it, and then coming out of it, the show is pretty much going to be over. But what we're going to do, we're going to end it with an audio clip by Alan Watts, and the audio clip is The Dream of Life. So it's not actually Alistar, just to give you a heads up, it's not the same one you sent me, it's another one that I grabbed that it fits in nicely with this. So we're going to ride this meditation into listening to Alan Watts. So without further ado, I'm going to get this meditation rolling, and if everybody just wants to get comfortable real quick. So Alistar, I'm just going to mute you, and then we'll actually Alistar, we're gonna roll right through this. So Alistar, just before we get into this, thank you for being on the show tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. Facebook.com/DMTmusic and DMTmetal.com. And was there anything else that you just want to say before we move into this?
No, I think we pretty much covered a wide thing. Just check out my Facebook at Alistar Valadez, and then also the band is at DMT Music. Those are both on Facebook. And then you can check us out at DMTmetal.com also.
Cool, man. All right, thanks a lot, man. I look forward to continuing this conversation. And reminder for the people, if you want to do Google After Party Hangout, there will be a link for that. I'll post it into the live chat, and also check out on Facebook. So facebook.com/paradigmshift.radio. So I'm going to play this Parabola audio track, then I'm actually going to stop it a little bit early, but we're still going to be able to listen to the Alan Watts and finish off the show with that. So without further ado, if everybody just wants to get comfortable, Alistar, thank you again for being on the show. I'm just going to mute you as we move into this.
All right.
So if everybody just wants to get comfortable, and you guys know how to meditate to a degree, starts off just with simple breathing. So if you're comfortable and relaxed, just listening, close your eyes if that's easiest for you. Just take a gentle inhale through the nose, and gentle exhale through the nose. I'm going to begin playing the audio track and just continue to find rhythm within your own breath. And just allow yourself to even feel the vibration within your brow, within your third eye, and just connecting to that intuitive knowing that this reality is indeed not as cut and dry as it appears to be. And we must embrace whatever may come. So enjoy. just continue to breathe. Continue to allow yourself to remain within this meditative state and listen to the words shared by our good friend, Alan Watts.
If you awaken from this illusion, and you understand that black implies white, self implies other, life implies death, or shall I say, death implies life, you can feel yourself not as a stranger in the world, not as something here on probation, not as something that has arrived here by fluke, but you can begin to feel your own existence as absolutely fundamental. I'm not trying to sell you on this idea in the sense of converting you to it. I want you to play with it. I want you to think of its possibilities. I'm not trying to prove it. I'm just putting it forward as a possibility of life to think about. So then, let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream. And that you could, for example, have the power within one night to dream 75 years of time, or any length of time you wanted to have. And you would naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure you could conceive. And after several nights of 75 years of total pleasure each, you would say, well, that was pretty great. But now let's have a surprise. Let's have a dream which isn't under control. Well, something is going to happen to me that I don't know what it's going to be. And you would dig that and come out of that and say, wow, that was a close shave, wasn't it? And then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now. You would dream the dream of living the life that you are actually living today. That would be within the infinite multiplicity of choices you would have, of playing that you weren't God. Because the whole nature of the Godhead, according to this idea, is to play that he's not. So in this idea then, everybody is fundamentally the ultimate reality, not God in a politically kingly sense, but God in the sense of being the self, the deep down basic whatever there is. And you're all that, only you're pretending you're not.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Facebook.com/ParadigmShiftRadio. Join the after party hangout to continue the conversation. And the show concludes there. So thank you once again for everybody who's listened in. And we'll still play some of the outro music just to work this in. So there it is. All right. So thanks again to Alistar who joined us tonight. And please continue to tell more people about Paradigm Shift Radio. Facebook.com, Paradigm Shift Radio. You know the website, ParadigmShiftCentral.com. And until next time, we'll see you in the future. So enjoy. Take care.